10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So when Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free," he was talking about knowledge that comes through firsthand experiences. This is what the Greek word translated "know" in this passage means. And when you couple that with Hebrews 11, and I think we can see faith experiential. Something that this tells us is that our faith is not lived through people in the biblical text. In other words, we live in the here and now by faith. And faith is experiential, which means we too have things that we can point to from our own experiences that confirm our trust in God. And as I look back on 2020, I have good reasons to believe. I have things that I can point to that show me that God's hands are in our affairs. And what I'm going to explain is something I began to see as I looked back at 2020. So let's go all the way back to 2019, where it had actually been decided that we wanted to focus on North Point as a family in 2020. We wanted to begin the year by focusing on the picture presented in the New Testament of the church community being a family, and we really wanted to reinforce this image as we moved forward. And so, the first series I preached in 2020 was called The Holy Kiss, where I set out to explain the cultural context in which greeting one another with a holy kiss made sense. And a long story short, it was an acceptable way of greeting people, like a handshake or a hug or a fist bump today. Not that big of a deal, right? Well, picture a time where the church has people coming together from different backgrounds and ethnicities in a society where this is not normal. And these church leaders are writing letters asking everyone to get along. And in these letters, they try to promote things like acceptance and friendship and respect and unity. We're talking brotherly and sisterly love. We're talking family love. Now imagine being a Jewish believer giving a Gentile believer a kiss on the cheek. It would have been evidence that you fully accepted the Gentile into your fellowship. You were saying that we are in this together. We are unified. We are connected. And that's what the Holy Kiss was. It was a culturally accepted expression of unity, of acceptance, of connection. It said, we're in this together. We are family. It was an expression of what it means to love one another. And it's what the New Testament writers promoted. And so the remainder of the series set out to answer, how do we do this as a family? And in this series, I tried to show how being a family is how we need to see the church. And I started by looking at the language used in the New Testament. For instance, the terms brothers and sisters is used 115 times from Romans to Revelation. Furthermore, the language in these letters emphasize that this family working to provide for one another, where there's a certain level of comfort and acceptance, and we choose to be there for one another and to look out for one another. All the things that might normally come, naturally in tribal or family settings. And ultimately, this was a 6-week series, and so we went through 6 weeks of looking at these things with hopes that we might move forward by putting these things into practice. And the Sunday following this series, I actually began talking about Exodus. And we looked specifically at Exodus chapter 3, verses 7 through 10, where God is telling Moses that he has heard the cry of the Israelites in Egypt, and he is doing something about it through Moses. And I started the message by saying, every family has an identity, things that are central to who they are, things they all have in common. And see, I wanted to take you to Exodus to show you an identifying mark that we all have in common. So we focus on the fact that the story of the Exodus begins with people in Egypt and slavery and oppression. And God hears their cry and says, I'm going to do something about it. And as a result, being freed from Egyptian oppression becomes a central defining event in their history. And then I proceeded to explain how Our stories involve a type of Egypt as well. These moments where we cry out, God hears that cry and does something about it. And then in an effort to maybe help us to become better connected as a family, I challenged us all to put ourselves in the middle of oppression. If you want to understand God, put yourself in the middle of where people are crying out. It was about hearing what he hears because, well, that's where God will be listening. And I presented various opportunities to do this as well with things we had going on at the time. I challenge you to get involved in some way with Kids in Divorce and Grief Share and Five Loaves and Arms of Hope. But it wasn't just about these ministries because there are people all around us who feel their voices or perspectives were being oppressed. And so I challenge you to start having conversations with people with the intent to listen and understand their viewpoints. You never really know how people feel until you actually listen. And then I challenged each of us to become more involved with those around us, those in our spheres of influence. We all know of people struggling with addictions or depression. And if we know of people who are in despair, oppressed by sin, and they see no way out, I challenge us all to get involved in some way, shape, or form. Because not only do we have Exodus in common, God will use each of us to help free others, just like he did with Moses. And then the next message I presented, I did something unusual. I bought my family's junk drawer and cleaned it out in front of you all. It was a demonstration of an exodus of sorts. The point of that message was to demonstrate how we might have things we're holding on to that we need to let go, things that are holding us back and keeping us from moving forward. And this was important to discuss because the things that affect the individual members of a family has an effect on the whole family. And so there are times where we all need to go through our own exodus of sorts. And then the next message I gave took us back to the idea of exodus, and we looked at Abraham's exodus in Genesis 12. And what is so fascinating about that narrative is in Genesis 12 that Abraham's experiences parallel the exodus story of the Israelites in Genesis 47. Think about it. In both accounts, they end up in Egypt because of a famine. Both were initially treated well, and eventually things go very wrong for both of them. And in both cases, it is plagues that compel Pharaoh to tell them, get out. And they both leave Egypt pretty well off, with livestock and silver and gold. But here's the thing. Those were both just two stories in the much larger narrative of the Bible. And it was at this point that I set out to demonstrate how all these narratives have something in common. And it's something we all have in common as well. And that is God's constant pursuit of us. So we quickly went from Adam and Eve through the Old Testament all the way to the Apostle Paul and showed how all these stories supported the larger narrative of the Bible, which is that God is in pursuit of us. And people may run from God, and yet he still pursues. You can try and run from God, but he still shows up and says, hi, what you doing? And to those who accept his pursuit, he takes them through an exodus. And he does this because his mercy endures forever, and his loving kindness is everlasting. That's what the scriptures tell us. He is the hound of heaven, and if you love him, his pursuit will feel like love. But if you hate love, well, it's going to feel like hell. No matter what, you will always and forever be confronted with an ever-ending love of God. And it was that week, after I preached that message, that COVID-19 restrictions went into place, and everything shut down. Little did I know how important the concepts of family would be to us as a church, and how as a family we would have to endure the ultimate test. Little did I know how important understanding God's pursuit of us would really be in the months following that series. Little did I know how in the next few months we could all experience our own type of exodus. Little did I know how relevant those messages would come to be. And today I want to talk to you about toilet paper. We have every intention on abiding by the CDC guidelines, and we will continue to do so because we're not the experts, right? We don't have all the answers, nor are we going to pretend to know better. Our community is taking a stand, and we're going to stand with our community. This is a moment of solidarity. We are a part of this community. We have an impact on this community, and we're going to continue to do so. And this is one of the ways that we can love our neighbors, right? Now, our desire here is to stay connected. We have the technology. We're in such a good place right now where we can take advantage of what we have to stay connected and engaged. We can do this, and we can do this together. So we're in a time where we're being tested. It's all about perspective. This has the power to pull us together, to pull us closer to God. These circumstances are affecting people in different ways. We all have our different ways of responding to this stuff, different emotional responses. Stress affects us all differently, and for some of us, this stress has been taken to a whole nother level. Some people just seem like this isn't affecting them at all, or at least they don't feel like it is. If we pay attention, we can learn a lot about ourselves, and who knows what things in our hearts are going to surface during all of this, right? And as a result of your specific circumstances and the stress that you are under, you may find yourself reacting in certain ways that you might not like. If and when things about who you really are begin to surface, and you have to face them, instead of immediately beating yourself down, I want to challenge you to be kind to yourself. I want to challenge you to be gentle to yourself. I want to challenge you to love yourself. What it means to love your neighbor as yourself. The qualifier here is what? As yourself. The way you love yourself is ultimately the way you will love others. Now, others are feeling the same thing, because really, we're all in this together. More and more people are feeling more lonely and self-isolated, even when you're in the middle of the crowds, right? That was happening before this happened, so just imagine how people feel now. I think we need to be reminded that we're in this together. We've always been in this together. Maybe sometimes we haven't acted like it, but the reality is we all need each other. We all depend on each other. We need that social interaction. We need that. In situations like this, yeah, that brings that out. When all this is said and done, that we all will have this renewed sense of connection where we desire that and we're willing to do whatever it takes. All right, guys, welcome to the life of Jesus. And hey, guys, I hope this video finds you healthy and safe. And this is probably about the 100th time that I have tried to make this video. Hey guys, here with another lesson from the life of Jesus. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for another video on the life of Jesus. Welcome back to another lesson on the life of Jesus. Today is Good Friday. Special focus on events that led up to the cross, and so I created a video that I'm calling a Contemplative, a reading for Good Friday. I have a special message for you guys on Sunday in light of Easter now. So I've titled the message Easter at Home. I know it doesn't feel like Easter. How we're feeling right now is probably closer to how the disciples actually felt on Resurrection Sunday, on the first Easter Sunday. So today is Easter Sunday. It's supposed to be a day that ushers in a time where we come together and we spend several weeks celebrating the resurrection. But several weeks ago, something happened and it changed all of this. Now, early on, we actually thought that we would be through with socially isolating at this point, and we were going to focus on preparing for Easter Sunday, but we're not, and therefore we're all experiencing Easter at home. Now, while this is all different, it actually probably resembles more of what that first Easter Sunday was like. You see, our Easter is typically filled with like bright colors and lights and exciting songs, and rightly so, because it's a celebration. But the first Easter morning actually started in darkness. There wasn't a grand celebration. There's no Easter egg hunts, although I'm pretty sure everyone had Reese's peanut butter eggs in their icebox that morning. But my point is, the mood was probably more similar to our mood. Moments filled with sadness and moments of grief, maybe even moments of gratitude for what once was, filled with moments of fear and regret. So while we are absent from one another, Remember, the church still remains the church, whether gathered or scattered, whether in large buildings or in our homes, whether face-to-face or social distancing. The church is still the church, and this time does truly function as a symbol of our trust in God's ability to meet us regardless of where we are. So just as on that first Easter Sunday, Jesus showed up in their hiding and in their social distancing, He met them with their fears and confusion. He met them in the middle of their grieving, their loss, in the middle of their shock. And He also meets us here too. And so out of this darkness and chaos, out of our fears and anxieties, out of our grieving and bewilderment, we celebrate Easter. We celebrate Easter because it has the power to turn the darkness into light and to bring us comfort in our chaos. And today, we celebrate Easter, whether gathered or scattered. For He is risen. He is risen indeed. I know a lot of us are getting tired of this. This is getting old, right? I want to challenge you to at least reach out to one different person. Reach out somewhere to someone in some way. Just knowing that people care, knowing that people are thinking about you, it goes a long, long way. And so I want you to think about the things that you did before all this happened. Anything this time is giving us an opportunity to stop and think about where we are. The governor yesterday's press release, shared with us the various phases as to reopening our economy, and people want to know what that means for us. We are part of the city of Saxon, so we stand in solidarity with our community, and we're going to base our decisions ultimately on what the city says. Regardless of where you fall, if you think the state is moving too fast or moving too slow, you might think that the county and the city is moving too fast or too slow. You might think we're not moving fast enough. The people who are making these decisions, these are really tough calls to make. And so have a little grace, continue to, dig down deep and be patient and do the hard work. It makes me think about the moments, the situations, the reasons why a person would have to, in that moment, die to themselves, and what that looks like and what that feels like. And I think that feels a lot like what we're feeling, what we have been feeling, and maybe even what we're tired of doing. To ask what's the right thing to do. And you ask what the right thing to do is in light of the bigger picture and in light of other people. Because that's a part of dying to ourselves. I really look forward to the time that we can come together again. But before we do that, we have to ask and answer the question, what's the next right thing to do? Use this time to learn to suffer well. And as James says, there is something to be gained from enduring the suffering. I get it. I mean, look at me. It's obvious. I'm looking rough. Hey guys, we are back at the office. We have so many moments, say, in our lives that prepare us for moments that we're not in, or maybe situations that we haven't found ourselves in yet. It's like a pre-game game plan. In fact, you could go back and review many of the series that we have done together and see how in many ways, as weird as it may seem, we have been preparing for this moment. Today, I want to talk to you about this process we've all been going through and a little bit about how we are managing it as people. Of course, I'm talking about this pandemic, what it is putting us through, and how we're responding to it. The last time I checked into my local gym was March 16th at 6 a.m. That evening, we got the message that the gym would be closed until further notice due to the coronavirus. And when this happened, I had a number of feelings rush over me, and since then I've felt various things at various times. At times I felt the feelings associated with being anxious, concerned, frustrated, happy, content, restlessness, and so on. I just recently got a message that the gym was reopening on June 1st. Once again, a number of feelings came over me as I began to think about how this was going to work. It's a big gym, and they're limiting people. And quite frankly, I don't want to wake up early in the morning and head to the gym not knowing if I'm going to be able to work out. Needless to say, my gym hasn't given me enough information to make a decision on what I'm going to do when it reopens. And as a result, I have the feelings that are associated with frustration. But it's just a gym. What's the big deal? Exactly. It is just a gym. It is not considered one of the most critical or essential services in our community. In many ways, it's a luxury and a convenience. So why was I so brokenhearted when it closed, and why do I allow myself to get worked up about its reopening? I could tell you that it's just simply because I really want to be able to go to the gym. It's a major part of my day, and it's how I start my day. It's not just picking up weights and putting them down. Lots of things happen, lots of thinking happens, and it's where I'm able to challenge myself physically and mentally. I've made many connections with people at my gym. People I've been seeing on a daily basis for years, and I can go on and on. Now, while all those things may be true, I also know that my feelings of frustration with all of this are really pointing to something that runs much deeper in me. While all those things I mentioned are true, they are not the reasons for my feelings. If I dig a little deeper, I can tell you that I am more concerned about not being in shape. We can even dig a little deeper than that and uncover more underlying things that really get to the heart of what my feelings are pointing to. I know because I've done it. I have a pretty good idea of why I feel this way. So you see, feelings are oftentimes just indicators of something deeper going on with us. And what's fascinating is the fact that by just trying to get to the bottom of why I feel this way allows my feelings to work themselves out. And it actually changes the way I feel. But I'm not just trying to manage how I feel. I am trying to address the underlying condition that may have a tendency to promote these destructive feelings in me and the outbursts or reactions that can result from me being mastered by them. And when we address the underlying condition, it can lead us to the heart of the matter. See, when we start dealing with the heart of the matter, what we're really touching on is our character. Just like faith and hope are inseparable, so are the fruit of the Spirit, each one leading to the next and helping to define the other. And this is what could come out of the trials we experience and navigate through, like COVID-19. So my question for you is, what has this pandemic done to you? How has it affected you? Have some things surfaced that you need to address? How has your faith and hope guided you through this trial? See, faith and hope are not things to display just Sunday morning in Sunday morning gatherings, but they should permeate our entire lives as we go and live in each moment. Because it's during these processes we need to come to terms with what our feelings are. See, we may need to deal with some deep negative feelings that we have towards others. These conditions can have an effect on how we react to people just in general. We need to address any underlying conditions, any baggage that weighs us down. It's what the Hebrew writer was talking about when they were talking about every weight and sin that so easily entangles us. And sometimes there are deep wounds from past relationships and situations that we have just not properly dealt with. And sometimes just simply acknowledging, confessing, talking about these things helps us to actually face them and be able to move forward. Now, other times, it may take some efforts and restitution, seeking forgiveness, even just seeking counseling to help us deal with these wounds. Simply put, sometimes we just simply have to be intentional about dealing with the wounds in whatever manner is necessary. So, you see, as disciples of Jesus, we are dealing with the ideas and images that fill our minds, irregardless of the circumstances. We are addressing our past experiences, the things that have formed our hearts. We take our thoughts and we line them up and compare them to what Jesus says. We bring into question our ideas and we line them up with the mind of Christ. We are saying that we want to leave those harmful conditions behind for a holy condition, a godly character, like Jesus. It's what Paul was talking about in Romans chapter 12, verse 2. This is what a disciple of Jesus does. And this is how a disciple of Jesus navigates pandemics, trials. This is how a disciple of Jesus navigates this life. We are going to do something this Sunday. This Sunday, we're having a tailgating event from 5 to 7 p.m. At this time, our goal is to have our first indoor worship service sometime in mid-July. This Sunday morning from 8:15 to 9:45, there will be a tailgating event. We're calling it Coffee, Donuts, and Communion. First, we are making progress with our plans for when we can come back together indoors. But just know this, we will not be able to pull this off without all of us working together. All right, guys, I have an important and exciting announcement for you. On July 12th, we're going to begin to resume worship services in our facility. I know some of you are anticipating our return to indoor services on July 12th. However, we have decided to push this back a week. All right, guys, July 19th is the day that we have set for our coming back together in the indoor service in, several months. And so you might be wondering, what's this going to look like? And so let's do a little walkthrough and I'll show you. One final note. We are depending on you who come to this event, to our worship service. We're depending upon you to help us in being able to continue to meet inside this building. We need your cooperation in following the guidelines that have been presented. These are moments where we really are dependent on one another in order for this to be successful now and for us to be able to continue into the future. We really are in this together. And now is the time we don't just say it, but we show it.
Everyone has their own feelings about what's going on right now, what the response to the pandemic should be, what we should or should not be doing, what we shouldn't have to be doing, and you have the right to believe and feel what you want. However, let me remind you that we use our freedom to serve one another in love. We can choose to be intentional about self-sacrificially loving other people. But who would choose to be intentional about self-sacrificially loving other people? Who would choose to set aside their own feelings about something for someone else? Who would choose to go against their emotions for the sake of someone else? Who would choose to put themselves last so that they might become love? Who would do this? Disciples of Jesus. It's what we do. It's what we signed up for. We accepted the call to become the image of Jesus, to love as God loves, to be love. And when we do this, this is when the world begins to see God. For John said, no one has ever seen God, but if we keep on loving one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. And this is when people will be able to see the presence of God in us. So in these times, may you transcend those things that keep you from loving. May you self-sacrificially love others. May you reflect God and be love.
So here's the thing you need to know about this year. The only thing I had planned for 2020 was the January series. Then the messages that followed, which were focused on Exodus, those came week to week. And once the pandemic hit, I was going day to day. There was very little planning that was taking place. And one of the first things I said in the beginning of the year was, family means we are in this together. Now, I didn't remember saying that until last week when I went back to my notes from January. But I find it interesting that it becomes the phrase I most often use during the lockdown. Little did we know that after talking about being a family and wanting that to be a reality, that there would be a pandemic, and that would be the perfect opportunity to challenge us as a family to be a family. And then I started the year talking about Exodus. And again, little did I know the following months would present opportunities for us all to experience our own Exodus of sorts. Not only that, we actually ended the year focused on Exodus. And I have to tell you that this was not planned. I'd forgotten all about the fact that we had started the year talking about Exodus. Again, I didn't remember until last week. So I think God might have a message for us all from Exodus. Which is another interesting thing to note, that the Exodus from Egypt is all about being liberated from oppression. And I challenge us all to put ourselves in the middle of oppression to hear what God hears and to get involved somehow. And then I presented opportunities to do this. And little did I know that the following months would sink us all into a time of oppression of sorts, and where we would be challenged to not only hear both God and others, but be challenged to reach out to people in new ways, where our involvement with others would look different. And when God took Israel through Egypt, through the Exodus, it was a journey. It was a journey through transformation so that they could become those who represent God in this world, so that they could be the image of God and ultimately be love. This was the central idea behind multiple messages once we started coming back together. Coincidence? I can tell you, I didn't plan it this way. I couldn't even remember what the beginning of the year looked like. I had totally forgotten what the theme for 2020 was supposed to be. Yet, we didn't miss a beat. And I can keep going on, but my point is, when I look back on 2020, I may not be able to explain everything, but I can definitely see God's hand in our affairs. Now, I admit 2020 was hard. It was challenging. It was stressful. It was traumatic and devastating in many ways. And in a lot of ways, it's not over with. But from out of the chaos can come new life. You may have noticed that I have been using the word I a lot in this video, because this is my testimony to you of how I can look back and point to things that give me reasons to trust in God, and specifically with just my teaching. And I have many, many, many other examples I can give from my own personal life. But it's not just about me. So what have you learned from 2020? What has this experience been like for you? How were you challenged? Did you learn anything about yourself? If something like this happens again, will you approach it differently? Looking back, do you perhaps see how God was in pursuit of you and how he took you through your own exodus of sorts? And if so, and you would like to share your story, please let me know, and we will make that happen. Of course, unless God has other plans. But I learned so much in 2020. It was definitely a year that presented so many opportunities for growth and maturity, and I see how the Spirit was working and God was pursuing, and I am anticipating the same moving forward. So Happy New Year, grace and peace, and I'll talk to you soon.
Won't forget the wonder of how you brought deliverance, the exodus of my heart. 'Cause you found it, you freed me, held back the waters for my release. Oh Yahweh, sing this with me. You're the God who fights for me, Lord.